Welcome to God's Kingdom, where every story brings you closer to God.
Today, we're going to do something a little different. Think of it as a spiritual health check. But our guide, it's about 2,000 years old, and you'll be amazed at how shockingly relevant it still is. It's like we're tapping into some ancient wisdom that feels like it was made for right now. So, let's dive in. Let me ask you something. What if your life looked perfect on the outside? You know, you have this great reputation, everything seems to be going right, but inside, it's kind of empty. Something critical is just missing. It's a heavy thought, right? And that question is exactly what we're digging into today. So here's how we're going to do this checkup. We're turning to the 3rd chapter of the book of Revelation. We're going to look at these direct messages sent to 3 very different ancient communities. Think of them as case studies, Each one has something really important to tell us about our own spiritual health. Okay, so here's our roadmap. We've got 3 communities, and each one gets a totally different spiritual diagnosis. First up is Sardis. They had this amazing reputation, but inside, spiritually dead. Then there's Philadelphia, the total opposite, praised for just hanging in there and being faithful. And last, we've got Laodicea, and their problem was just plain indifference. Each one, trust me, has a lesson that's going to hit home. So our first case study is Sardis. This was a place with a fantastic public image, but it had a dark secret. Historically, the city was super wealthy, and that made them complacent, so much so that they were conquered twice because they just weren't paying attention. And that history, it's the perfect metaphor for their spiritual problem. It is a huge warning about the danger of a faith that's only skin deep. I mean, can you even imagine hearing a diagnosis this blunt? There is absolutely no sugarcoating it. This just lays bare this huge, tragic disconnect between their public image and their spiritual reality. They looked the part, they had all the right appearances, but the life, the actual vitality, was gone. But here's the thing. It wasn't a hopeless case. Not at all. The message to Sardis was like a clear prescription for recovery. First, wake up. A jolt out of that complacency. Then, strengthen what little good is left before it dies out completely. And finally, remember what you first believed and actually obey it. And the reward for doing so is just brilliant, a promise of purification and total security. All right, let's shift gears completely and talk about Philadelphia. Here, the story isn't one of correction, it's one of commendation. This isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about celebrating what held on strong. It's just a powerful example of what faithful endurance can do, even when you're feeling weak. And this is what's so crucial about them. They weren't some spiritual superpower. The text specifically says they had little strength. I mean, think about that. This was a community probably facing all kinds of intense pressure, maybe economically or socially, just because of their beliefs. Yet with the little strength they had, they remained loyal. They held on. And that persistence was everything. And because they were so faithful, they received this incredible promise. An open door is such a powerful metaphor, right? It's all about unstoppable opportunity, about a path forward that no obstacle or opposition can block. Their loyalty, born from that little bit of strength, literally opened doors for them that no one could shut. So let's connect the dots here. It's a really clear cause and effect. Their actions led directly to their reward. Because they kept God's word and didn't deny their faith, they were promised they'd be held up, protected through the hard times, and given a permanent honored place in God's temple. It's a beautiful picture of faithfulness being rewarded with ultimate security. And now for our 3rd and final case study, and this is probably the one you've heard of, Laodicea. See, here the problem isn't being spiritually dead or faithfully enduring. The problem is that they just don't care. They were stuck in that comfortable but really dangerous zone of spiritual indifference. So what does it really mean to be lukewarm? Well, for Laodicea, a city famous for its wealth from banking and medicine, it meant they were completely self-sufficient. And get this, the metaphor was literal for them too. Their water was piped in from hot springs, and by the time it got to them, it was this tepid, disgusting temperature. Spiritually, they were exactly the same, not passionately for their faith, but not really against it either. Their wealth had made them blind to their real spiritual poverty. And this is where it gets really jarring. Just look at the massive contrast between how they saw themselves and what the reality was. They saw themselves as rich, but they were spiritually poor. They thought they were well-dressed, but in reality, they were exposed and naked. They believed they could see everything clearly, but they were spiritually blind. This huge gap, that's the heart of the problem. But even for this indifferent, self-satisfied community that thought it needed absolutely nothing, the message doesn't end in condemnation. In fact, it's their very self-sufficiency that makes the final image so powerful. It leads to one of the most personal and famous invitations in the entire Bible, a call to action for anyone who thinks they've got it all figured out. And this is the climax. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. He isn't breaking down the door or shouting from a distance. He is standing right there, personally, at the door, and knocking. It's this gentle, patient, and persistent invitation to a real relationship, and it's offered to the very people who had grown completely indifferent to him. So what are the big takeaways from our spiritual checkup? Well, from Sardis, we learn to be genuinely alive, not just settle for a faith that looks good. From Philadelphia, we see that staying faithful, even when you feel weak, is incredibly powerful and gets rewarded. And from Laodicea, we're warned to be committed and avoid that trap of comfortable indifference. Because ultimately, there's always an invitation to respond. Which brings it all right back to that final image. The knock is happening. The invitation has been made. And so the only question left, for them then, and for us now, is a deeply personal one. Will you open the door?
Thank you for watching our video. Like, share, and subscribe for more.